Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Rolka. Welcome to this week's live event, number 7. Some really, really cool questions, and one that came in just a half an hour ago, and I'm really, really excited about it. But I'm going to dive right into all these questions, and of course, the chat is open, so please feel free to submit your questions or thoughts or interact with others in the chat. As always, it's great to see you, and thanks for showing up. Thanks for subscribing if you've chosen to do so, all that kind of stuff. So, in any case, a couple quick questions that came in via email. Really, really great stuff here. How to lighten off too much vocal weight. And I assume the question here is, how do you know if you've left off too much weight off the vocal fold? And usually that manifests itself in airiness. And FYI, welcome. Good to see that you've made it here on time this time, Zorko. So yeah, if you find that you're practicing and you're trying to lighten things, and you've gone from and you find that it's become where it's really, really wispy, that's going to be too much. More subtle than that, though, is if you find you're getting into the zona de passaggio, like for me around here-ish, and I sang, it just doesn't, sonically, it doesn't match. My vocal delivery there on the bottom isn't really that bad. It's light, and still connected, and it's still a full sound, but it just doesn't match, and so we can be a bit fuller here, and those timbres will match a little bit better. Of course, I would love to. Oh, that is the question. A question about rasp. Your opinion on it. Can you be more specific? What exactly are you? What are you talking about with raspiness? Is it like at the tonal onset, or in the middle of it, or what's going on? Heidi. I love singing harmony too. It's one of my favorite things to do, and you are very welcome. Thank you for the shout. I truly, truly appreciate it. I think I'm going to do more videos on harmonization, not only because it seems like people really like it, but I have a lot of fun doing them. I really, really enjoy that. And I think it's just such good value for money, is what you would say in England. If you add a harmony singer to your band, it doesn't just take you up like a notch in terms of sounding good. It takes you up like 3 or 4 notches. Really, really adds a lot. And then this next question that came in was, I talk about placing vowels in a balanced or neutral space. And is the idea of thinking about placing the sound first, oops, I skipped to a question. Balanced neutral space in the mouth to resonate similarly. How can we use our soft and hard palates to aid this, or how can they be used to help our singing? And the question that was later on in this sheet absolutely relates to that, which is, how can our facial muscles, teeth, and lips help our singing? For example, I've read that cheek lifts, trumpet lips, and inner smile can help the tone and the sound and projection. Are they really necessary, or are they psychosomatic? And these questions are really, really interesting, because the hard palate, which is if you took your tongue and started back behind your front top teeth and started to grow back, you'll feel those ridges of bone, and that's your hard palate. That doesn't move, right? It stays in place. As you go further back, you'll get to your soft palate, and the soft palate does move. And lifting the soft palate at the appropriate time, which is usually in the zona de passaggio, is what gives us that height to our voices. So if you're getting near the zona de passaggio, and there I'm doing nothing to lift, right? But if I lift the soft palate a little bit, the sound lifts along with it, and we get some height to it. And so we have to learn how to do that. These two questions that they asked relate because a lot of those facial muscles and the kind of shapes, the inner smile and stuff, are ways to get us to shape the inner oral cavity, to shape it and change the shape of it. So if you've come across the inner smile technique where your teacher has had you go like that and made a really toothy grin, when we lift our cheeks like that, our soft palate almost always goes with it. And that's a way to get that lift. Now, the cheek lifting can take some of the weight off the sinus passages. And what will happen there is that those cavities will open and there'll be a little bit more sympathetic resonance that can occur. So the outer facial muscles have an impact on the inner shapes. It's the inner shapes, however, that we're really interested in getting to open up and manipulate to have the kind of sound that we want. So in summary, we have to work with those shapes. Outer muscles can help us do that initially. Eventually, however, you probably don't want to go on stage singing like that. If it's appropriate to the genre, then you're all set. If not, then you're going to have to try and feel that inner lift and then replicate it without that kind of a grin. I'm going to take a look here. BRB, I'm not sure what that means. But Susan Taylor, hello Jeff, thank you for the videos. I have a question about vocal fatigue. Every Thursday night I have choir rehearsal for an hour, and by the time the hour is done, I barely have a voice left. Am I working my voice too hard? Well, I don't know because I'm not there. However, if you're losing your voice, obviously something is not working out. Now, if you're singing a part that isn't ideal for your fache, so like they've got you singing coloratura soprano stuff, like in the stratosphere, and your fache is really more of an alto or a mezzo, then it's entirely possible that you can be inducing a lot of vocal fatigue by singing in that range all night long. The way to deal with this, however, is to really focus on your alignment and your engagement. Frequently, when we come across vocal fatigue, it's more to do with that we're not aligned properly, we're not expanding adequately, or we're sitting in our chair and it's an uncomfortable or uncommon position. So you've got to try to explore whether or not you're truly engaged in supporting your voice adequately. Assuming that they have put you in the proper section of the choir, so the choir director has listened to you sing and evaluated everything and said, okay, this is the part that you should sing. Assuming that that's all been done correctly, then I would look to your engagement and how you're interacting with your voice at that time. If it's late in the day, yeah, you say Thursday night. So if you've been working all day or whatever it is you do throughout your day and perhaps you're a little tired, you've got to summon the energy to support adequately, do all the things that we do when we're practicing. Sit up straight, expand properly, watch how your shoulders and openness is working for you. But are you working your voice too hard? Maybe, maybe not. Supporting, perhaps not ideally, quite possibly. I'm baritone, and when I'm trying to sing songs like Demons or Apologize, it feels hard and too high for me. How can I expand my range? Great question. First and foremost, make sure that you've got a well-aligned thyroarytenoid dominant range, so chest voice range. And what that means is that all of your vocals in a comfortable range for you. For me, it's here. You can sing all the vowels in that register of your voice with good alignment. They resonate similarly. Once you're there, keep exploring your engagement, keep exploring your airflow and support. And then there's a video of mine, How to Sing High Notes for Male Vocalists, Part 1. And it will begin to take you through that video as part of a 3-video series. It will start you on the process of learning how to access the upper register of your voice. Hello. Thank you. Gerald Ryan, you. So there was another, this was more of a comment, and it came through literally about a half an hour ago in one of the videos. And most of us, if you play guitar, and you accompany yourself, you are almost certainly familiar with alternate tunings, meaning that some of the guitar strings, usually they're tuned E, A, D, G, B, E. But very frequently in rock and roll, the lower E string will be tuned down a major second to a D. And this has the effect of making power chords on the lower strings very easy. And it also gives the key of D a very deep and resonant sound, because when you have a D chord with that low D, the guitar just rings and it's amazing. But I have to admit, this person brought this to my attention. I had completely not given any consideration to changing the standard of tuning. And for singer-songwriters, this could have an incredibly dramatic effect. So I'm not going to read this whole comment because it's quite long, but A440 is something that we commonly hear, right? And what that means is that the A above middle C, and I'm going to use a tone that's a little bit less wavery, that A natural is cycling at 440 cycles per second. But that standard has changed over the course of music history, and it's gone quite high, up to A450 at times, and then it's gone quite low, even near 400, which gets, that's nearly a quarter tone flat as we would hear it. But the person wrote in and said that they really enjoyed having things tuned to A435. It had a really dramatic impact on where the transition points in their voice were. And of course, our voices are built into us. They're naturally occurring things. They don't adhere strictly to Western tonal music. And so it's entirely possible to change your standard to make things much more comfortable for you. And what that means is that you would have to calibrate your tuner to do that. So here I have my Korg A212. You cannot buy these any longer. I am certain I got this many, many years ago. But if I play an A, you can hear that they line up perfectly. But I can calibrate this to A435. And now you may or may not hear it, but if I play it with the piano, you hear those waves. And that's because I've recalibrated A to be ever so slightly flat as it relates to the standard that we typically use. Everything else, if I tuned the rest of my guitar or I had my band all tuned to this tuner, we would effectively be lowering the standard of A. And it could make things line up really, really well with my voice. So I'm not saying that you have to do this, but it's something to think about. And I just hadn't really thought about it at all. And it's a really, really interesting comment. Equally, if you wanted to brighten the sound of your band without changing the key entirely, you could tune your standard to A441 or 445. And as long as it worked with your voice, that would have the effect of brightening up and giving the sound a little bit of additional crispness to it. So yeah, there's an interesting thought. Is it possible to expand your lower range? That's a very interesting question, Heidi. You can find that, in my experience, when we get better alignment of our chest voice notes, thyroarytenoid dominant notes, when they come into alignment better, we usually get a little bit of an extra note or two. The usable range is typically a little bit less than that. So for example, if I'm singing down here, no, actually be here. I don't usually like to perform anything lower than that C. Of course, I can sing a little bit lower. And there, as I'm getting on to B flat below low C, there's a little bit extra air, there's a little bit of vocal fry that's happening. And I could go a little further still, but those notes, I want to avoid them if I can. If I push on them to try to get more resonance or more volume, I quickly lose them because I'm not a baritone. That's that area, the power zone for those notes lies with the baritones more than it does with tenors. I can sing them and I can use them, but in a lead vocal setting, I feel like I'm walking on thin ice there. I want to be much more in the middle range of my voice or upper range of my voice. I feel much more comfortable there. So certainly with narrowing the vowels, watching alignment, you can get a few extra notes down there on the lower end of your range, but there is a finite point that you'll come to when the vocal fold is just vibrating at as low a frequency as it's going to. And even then, I would try to give myself a little bit of room for error and stay a major second or even a minor third above that ultimate bottom point. Can I do a vocalization for choir for tenor? Tenor 1, sure. Yeah, sure. Dwayne, hello. Strengthen the break area. Absolutely, great question. Some of the ones that I love are the NG sound. The NG is really, really good at working on the zona di passaggio. So let's just say that I'm not going to go above it. I'm just going to stay in the range that's right in it and below it. So I might do it on lip trill. Just looking for continuity of air, right? And a little bit of brightness too. If I had a lip trill that was really narrow or really unbalanced and open, that would be warning signs to say that I need to practice a little bit more. But when it's flexible, then that's a good sign that I can probably move on. Then I might do NG. Then I could release to E perhaps. And keep on practicing through there. If I'm new to singing above the break, I want to work it down. So again, lip trill. And then you, descending through the secondo passaggio, and then start working it from the bottom, continuing to work it down, just splitting up my time, descending through the secondo passaggio or break, if you will, and then ascending to it, back and forth, practicing with these things, doing consistent airflow work, making sure that my engagement is there and that I'm flexible enough to do it. The How to Sing High Notes video, it goes through a lot of those exercises, and then from there in the warm-ups and technical video playlist, you can find stuff that identifies like this is endurance in the zona di passaggio or endurance in the break area. Those videos are what to look for. Susan, while working on lessons, I find it easier to sing through the break when I am on a descending scale, but it is harder when I'm on an ascending scale. Is that to be expected? Yes, that's an excellent observation, and I commend you for that. This is typically because the habits that we develop as vocalists typically apply more to ascending scales or ascending songs to the zona di passaggio than to descending, which is why when we like are first beginning to work on upper register technique or making a smooth transition, we start from the top and go down. To simplify that whole statement, if we've been singing songs and we've decided to start taking lessons or start studying, as you have, here on the channel and in your choir and all that. All the time that we spent singing those songs before we started studying, we've built habits. And almost always one of the habits that we build is that we're going to start squeezing out high notes. And so we have to learn a new way of doing that. For example, I can sing and hit the notes in I'm Not the Only One, which I assume is the Sam Smith song, in lower key, but when I try to sing it in the original key, I can hit the notes, but only if I use falsetto in chorus. Well, okay, a good observation. This is part of the reason why it's important to be able to change keys, and I commend you for having the ability to change keys. We're not all Sam Smith. We're not all, for some reason I'm thinking of Geddy Lee from Rush. Don't know why. We're not all Freddie Mercury. That's not to mean that we can't sing those songs. It's just that the songs weren't written for us. They weren't written to take advantage of our strong suits. And you can rest assured that I'm Not the Only One was put in a key that helped make Sam Smith look as good as he looks. I mean, he sounds amazing, and I love listening to Sam Smith. But none of that takes away from his abilities and from his expertise. But we put the songs in keys that are good for us. Even if you had the exact same range as Sam Smith, it still might not be ideal for you. Okay? So if you put it in a lower key and you can sing it, that's great. If that doesn't really satisfy the needs of the song, then singing it in an upper register is perfectly legitimate. You have to answer the question of how well you want it to match. If you can't match your upper register with your chest voice yet, then work on making a successful transition through the secondo passaggio. Work on your airflow. There's tons and tons of videos on the channel that you can check in with that will help you to do that. Is it possible to sing and tenor range like tenor singer does if I'm a low baritone? So, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the teachers that I know from back in San Francisco, in his own words, he is a baritone vocalist, and what he says is that he masquerades as a tenor. Being a baritone doesn't limit how high you can sing. It's a designation of the characteristics of your voice, where your zona di passaggio is likely to be, and the characteristics of the low range of your voice. So you can learn to make a successful transition through the secondo passaggio and open up the higher register of your voice and sing the same tessitura as most tenors would sing, certainly as high as in the Sam Smith tune. Will you sound exactly like a tenor? Probably not. You're going to have a different place, a different power zone, a different place where your voice is really, really going to shine. But you should be able to sing legato through those areas of your voice. You're welcome. Dwayne, you're welcome. Smiley face, Jay. Susan, you're very welcome. It is a pleasure. We got a small break in the action. And so I'm going to come back to my emailed questions that came in. And I want to just touch on this. It's not really a question, but it's a beautiful, beautiful way of thinking about legato singing. In some of my videos, I talk about priorities for us as vocalists. You are very welcome, Predator734619. It is a pleasure. And I talk about it in terms of how we want to focus first on airflow, next on our melody, and third on our lyrics. So in our order of priorities, like if we make a list of our priorities, then airflow is our top priority. Without good, consistent airflow, everything else becomes suspect. Next comes our melody. And so we're focusing first on the airflow. That is going to enable us to sing the melody effectively. And then we get to our lyrics. And lyrics gets broken down into first vowel sounds and second consonants. And in their in their question/comment, they quote, they sort of paraphrase Renee Fleming, and they say that legato singing is being like a clothesline. You've got the clothesline, and every so often you've got the little pegs that hold your clothes in place. And the vowels are the line, and the pegs are the consonants, and we just want to lightly touch those pegs. And the question that we get to is, would you agree that we should only just touch upon consonants, and if so, how should that sound? And I thought that was an amazing question and an amazing visual representation of it. So is it just so lovely? I always think about it in terms of a violin bow. When a violinist is playing, you know, the bow keeps going. They keep the bow moving, unless it's something that's really, really staccato. And their fingers will move, and you get that connection throughout the entire line. So what does it sound like? First of all, there's this kind of neutral position. Let's make up some words here. Maybe I could see you. Maybe I could see you. Maybe I could see you. The real tough one is the could, that K. That K sound, it's a C, of course, and you spell it. But that's going to break the air column up quite a lot. Maybe I could see you. And I have to really, really keep my mind focused on airflow, vowels, and then the consonants. Maybe I could see you. The interesting thing about consonants in vocal music is that it does vary depending on your genre. So if you're singing theater, then the necessity of being understood and being clear is much more important than if you're a singer-songwriter who's singing their very own song. You have a lot more latitude with how intelligible you are to your listeners. So if I were singing theater, maybe I could see you. I'm going to enunciate those ever so slightly more. If I don't have the onus of intelligibility, I can go for as legato as I wish. Maybe I could see you. And make it very, very legato. So yeah, there is perhaps a point at which you become completely unintelligible. And if that is undesirable, if you want your message to get across, then you're going to have to make the consonants a little bit more clear in the song. But you can still sing through them and have good airflow and be legato with it. More often than not, what happens is we focus on the consonants too much. May, and at the expense of the vowel. And that's what really, really starts to pull our technique apart at the seams. When there's way too much focus on those consonants, then we get into problems. And the answer to that is to practice without them. A, I, E, maybe I, E, I, E. Take the consonants out entirely, and then practice putting them back in. Put in 10%. Maybe I could see you. Go to 20%. Maybe I could see you. Find out where the sweet spot is for you, where you feel like, the song I'm singing here has good intelligibility, and I still have a good legato phrase. We got some more questions that are popping up, so I'm going to take those on screen. Back. Sorry for the late respond. Parent messed up the washing machine. No worries. Anyway, the reason I asked about rasp, because I wonder why rasp is dangerous and how can we maintain our voice doing that? Awesome question. A little bit of vocal fry is cool, and it's very much of the time. You hear it all over the place. I employ it every once in a while. When it comes to raspiness in the voice, It's about how we achieve it and how frequently we achieve it. If it's all over the place, then we're going to fatigue pretty quickly. If it's at the very beginning of a phrase, that can be really cool, and it can, it can grab your listener's attention and be a nice little additive. If we can't start our phrase without it, though, I would stipulate that it's not a choice. And my MO in being a vocal coach and a singing instructor is to enable you with choice. I want you to have as much choice as possible when it comes to expressing yourself in the music that you choose to sing. So if I were working with you and you always had that rasp, then I would want to explore what it sounds like without it and how we can achieve, that flexibility to have it when you want it and to remove it when you don't. Now, a healthy amount of rasp is usually found by coming back from a clean tone. So, I didn't quite make it that time. Just gently easing into it so that you find out where is that tipping point where I've got a little bit of that raspiness to my voice, but I'm still really protecting myself, and I'm using mostly good vocal technique. Hi. Hello. For someone who is begging to sing, should I focus on improving my chest or head voice? Start with your chest voice. Upper register singing will come. It will be easier for you to have a full range sound if you work with your chest voice initially. In my videos, that's referred to as the thyroarytenoid dominant singing position. So begin there and then move on to your head voice. I guess I'm sort of assuming, Gerardo ASC, I'm assuming that you're a new vocalist. If that's not true, then let me know. But yeah, if you're a new vocalist, start with your chest range. Good question, Heidi. Really good question. How do you approach a song in a language with a lot of plosives, like German? The B's and the P's. The B's and the P's, if you think about an M sound preceding the B or P, it can help soften it somewhat. Again, you have to work with a balance so that you're getting the proper consonant at the right time. Making sure that you're very cognizant of how you are engaged. You've got to be present with your engagement so that the line keeps going past the plosive. For C's and K sounds and those two are going to they're going to have a fairly dramatic impact on the linearity of your airflow. Be very conscious of it. Take them out and practice the lines without them, and then work them back in, and that will help you figure out how much of the plosive you can tamp down and still have a viable performance of the song in question. I don't know if I understand your question, Zoruku. I am curious to know what a chest voice and a head voice as well. Are you talking about what they are or how they sound? Predator 734619. I also have a problem while I'm trying to sing high. I feel tension in my throat. My voice does not break. I don't feel pain or SMTH. Don't know what that means. But still feel some tension and also vibration in my nose. Well, the tension in your throat, if you're not feeling pain, I don't know what SMTH is meant to be. But the main thing there is that you're not feeling pain. If you're feeling pain, you've got to stop and reevaluate how you're approaching your voice. The tension in your throat may develop into pain if you continue with that for too long. If it doesn't break, that's not an indication that you're using your voice properly. That just means that you are quite possibly forcing your thyroarytenoid muscles to sing high notes. The tension in your nose is that resonator out front, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's also not indicative of good or bad vocal technique. The main thing is the tension that I would want you to work with and evaluate. You want to reduce that as much as possible, because my concern is that the tension is ultimately going to start hurting you. So check out that video on high register singing, see about making a good transition through the secondo passaggio, and then see how that affects your high register. It will take a little bit of practice. Just be forewarned, you're not going to watch the video and immediately be able to do it. It's going to require practice. Jeff, what makes a good solo voice? That is an interesting question and highly subjective, I would say. I suppose there are, in that varies from genre to genre. I predominantly work with musicians who sing popular music, so range isn't always the defining factor. Though truthfully, most pop male vocalists are tenors, or they're singing in the tenor range. So that means they've got to simulate the resonances that you would associate with a tenor voice in the upper register and be able to sing a certain range. Female vocalists are the same. I would posit that certain technical requirements are good necessities in today's day and age. In the popular music that we listen to, the ability to riff or to do a lot of ornamentation, as I would put it, is necessary. That means good airflow and good flexibility of voice to sing all those notes really, really quickly. If you're singing classical music and you're a tenor, then you better have a high C, which means having really, really good transitions through all those registration events. You need to have cultivated a lot of release in your voice over your training, and also have a really, really good airflow to support that release. Maybe give me a genre, Greg's Life 7. Point me in a direction here and I can talk more about that. Gerardo, new to singing, loving the channel. Thank you. Glad to have you around. I'm here every week, and yeah, thanks for the question, and enjoy. If you've got more questions, fire away. Heidi, thanks. I sing mostly in Turkish, which is just the opposite. Just wondered about it. Cool. Yeah, I must admit I don't know much about the Turkish language and what that may entail. But in the end, it really, the process is similar regardless of what language we're working in. Look at the vowel content first. I mean, again, assuming airflow and assuming that you've learned the melody. And often that learning the melody can be just on the lip trill or just with a single solitary vowel. So like if you're singing a song and it's a new song, right? I'm just always playing these scales. Let's play a different pattern. So let's say I'm doing that's my new song, right? So I haven't worked on it at all. First, I start there. That's very easy on my voice. And then maybe I do it on E. E until I'm solid. E. And then I can put my words in. Maybe I could see you. And then I get all my. Actually, I skipped this. I'm trying to tell you how to do this, and I skipped a step. May I take the consonants out, and then maybe I could see you. Put the consonants back in. It's a process. And truthfully, you go through a couple songs that way, and pretty soon you'll start to think about your new songs that way, and you won't necessarily have to go through it, maybe just the hard bits. I'm curious to know what a chest voice and head voice. Okay, I had that one. Solo voice, new to singing, got Heidi's question. JCS Radiant Ray. I can finally play piano pieces I like to sing, but cannot sing and play at the same time. Do you have any tips to help me? Might you consider creating a quick tip on the subject? Absolutely. I would happily do a quick tip on that subject. In fact, this is a subject that I am very, very interested in. I work in conjunction with a voice teacher in the San Francisco Bay Area, Megan Dibble, who's a friend and a lovely, lovely individual, a wonderful vocalist. If you happen to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, I would heartily recommend you look her up and get a couple lessons. And she and I do workshops on the coordination of singing and playing. What I would offer you initially are a couple thoughts, and I'll put these in the quick tip as well. But one, practice the parts individually. So practice your piano part, practice your voice away from it. If you don't have a recording of the piano part to practice your singing with, then make one. Your smartphone, if you have a smartphone or any cheap recorder, it doesn't have to be good. It just has to play back the part that you played. So make a recording so that you can practice without having to play. Go back and forth. Slow the tempo down. I don't have my metronome here right now. I was going to pull out my Dr. Beat. But use a metronome. It may prove challenging at first, but the metronome is your friend. I've been saying this for nearly 30 years. The metronome is your friend. It helps you keep a steady tempo, and when you get really used to it, it lets you relax, and a part of your brain will stop worrying about the time, and it makes it easier to stay in time, and it frees you in a way that's hard to describe, but works really, really well. If the pieces have specific accompaniments, in other words, it's all written out note by note in the piano piece, then this next tip is kind of irrelevant. But for singer-songwriters or people who are playing off of a lead sheet, and like a lead sheet is something that looks like this, and I'm going to cover up the title there, and you can see there that it has these chord symbols and fretboards, as well as the piano part down here. You can just play the chord symbols in as simple a pattern as possible. So, if you've got a piano part that's C major, D major, A major, and C, and it goes on and on and on like that. Well, if you can, just play a simpler part and work your way back to the work your way back to that just by going back and forth, back and forth. But again, a metronome is your friend. You want to get your metronome involved. And I will do a quick tip on that. Turkish has vowel harmony, either back or front vowels. Cool. Gerardo, one question. Do I always need a musical instrument to guide me with my vocal exercises? I find I always need to hear a piano to hit even the most basic notes correctly. That's a very interesting question. No, you don't need a musical instrument to sing, but musical instruments will keep you honed in on a standard. So if you're singing a song and it's in the key of C, and you practice it without playing the piano at the same time, it's entirely likely that your pitch will wander. You'll stray away from the melody that in the key that it's supposed to be in. And while that's not the end of the world, when you go back to playing it with the piano, you may find that in your practice you've strayed low or high, and you're no longer accustomed to singing it in the key that it's meant to be played in or that you're going to play it in. And so you're effectively going to have to learn the piece all over again, especially if it has any high range technique. So you don't necessarily need one, but I typically think it's a nice idea to use a standard, to have something playing and keeping you, like to a standard set of intonation. But as we're just getting started, using the piano to hit the notes is totally fine. It's completely fine. A word in German. Okay. Drags Life 7. I'm interested in singing mostly pop alternative music, mostly. I'm a mid-baritone trying to develop my high range for pop music, but it's been tough. One thing, in your high notes video, I don't really know how to sing the notes that are above the passaggio. I just end up doing them in a weird falsetto-ish sound. Okay. Everything that you're talking about is normal. That's the falsetto-ish thing. We get into that habit just from not having a good transition through the secondo passaggio. As a baritone range vocalist, you're wise to develop your upper register to sing pop alt music. That's where those songs are written to be sung. So if you want to be in that genre, then you pretty much have to sing into the tenor range. But you can get away with like an A natural above middle C. You don't have to sing into the stratosphere to be effective. In the video, it goes through that really dopey, hooty thing, right? You. The important thing about that is to be really, really open, you, above the secondo passaggio, you, and narrower below it, right? Practice that, you, in a descending fashion, you. Eventually, you can start doing it ascending, you. And what you're learning to do is to go from thyroarytenoid dominant singing to cricothyroid dominant. In the kind of nomenclature of our time, or the vernacular of our time, that's chest voice to head voice. As you get better at that, narrow the intervals. So that was a 1-octave arpeggio, and there's a perfect fourth between the notes that are below the secondo passaggio for me and those that are above. As you narrow the interval, you have to refine your technique. Eventually, you get into scale-wise stuff. At that point, start using the NG sound. And you really want the resonance to be the same. When you can do that, then you can release to ah. And now you're singing through the break, and you're maintaining a relatively consistent sound. And that's C major, and my break is about right there. So in each one of those examples, I'm going through my zona di passaggio, making a transition, getting into my upper register. Those are all synonymous. And that's what we have to learn to do to have an effective full range sound, and for you to then have that upper register that you can rely upon night after night without it sounding falsetto-ish. One last thing about that is that if you find yourself getting into that upper register and it's airy, or like you're doing that exercise, it's a really wispy, airy, that's a no-no. That's not the right way to approach it. And you've got to be really, really dopey sounding, really open. Oh, pardon me. I have a metronome. I will also try playing just the chords as I suggested. Look forward to the quick tip. Awesome. Yeah. Metronome is your friend. Metronome is the friend. Planning on getting guitar lesson on Friday and wondering if it would be good to use it to help me practice singing. Absolutely. Oh, okay. Cool. I'm glad I answered it already. That's cool. But yeah, guitar is great. You know, whatever you get used to, you'll find sort of a short note on different instrumentation. If you practice along with the piano predominantly, you'll get really accustomed to singing along with the piano. If you practice with a guitar predominantly, you will get accustomed to that. Just know that going into it, so that if you should then switch using a different reference, that it doesn't take you by surprise. Greg's Life, 7. I'm still kind of stuck at the first step with the arpeggios. Keep at it. You might, if you're doing it with the oo vowel, like I just did here, the you, and you're stuck, try it with the lip trill. And see if that helps you gain a little bit more flexibility. When we do the lip trill, the lips take some of the weight of the air column off the voice, and so it can be easier for those muscles to change the shape of the vocal fold. And that can give you a taste of how it's meant to work, and then you can go back to the oo vowel. But keep it legato with the lip trill. And you really got to make sure, if you do that, if you try that, that when you're on the bottom, it's got to be speechy. It's got to be your chest voice. If you get all the way down, and it's sounding really hollow at the bottom of the arpeggio, then you've got the opposite issue, and you're stuck in your cricothyroid dominant singing position. And that's useful too. That's countertenor technique, where you have like Bon Iver sings like this. His upper register stuff is typically done in the fashion of a countertenor, and it's lovely. It's beautiful, beautiful singing, but it's not going to help us learn how to make a smooth transition through the secondo passaggio, and that's what those videos are meant to do. I'm wondering about maybe doing a new version of that video that spends a little bit more time getting through that range of the voice. What does it feel like to be in cricothyroid dominant singing? Weird at first, particularly when you're in the middle of the zona de passaggio. If you are, when you're in the middle of the zona de passaggio, then you have a very, very well balanced vocal fold profile. So it's really not very heavy on the thyroarytenoid, and the cricothyroid aren't really entirely engaged in taking control, and it feels very much like you're going to lose it. It's when I first developed that balance, I would find myself laughing nervously or being very, very afraid that everything was going to fall apart, because it feels so light. It sounds fine, but it just feels so light, and it feels like it could be disconnected. But you listen to a recording and it sounds fine. When you're above the secondo passaggio, if you are new to cricothyroid dominant singing, it will feel very, very light. It will feel like falsetto sounds. Like when you sing in falsetto in that range, it's very wispy and airy, right? It's very airy and light. But if you cast your attention, internally to your throat, it's actually a very high vocal fold tension sound. To make that sound, you're really creating a lot of tension around the vocal fold. When you truly make the transition to cricothyroid, it doesn't have that squeeze, and it stays open, and you get a natural crescendo to the sound. But it feels light. There's no weight to my voice there. If it sounds like it has any weight, it's because of the resonance of it, which we learn to keep going. You're very welcome for my answer. JC's Radiant Ray. I alternate singing classical pieces in a high soprano voice, usually, and singing Christian pop with a small musical group in the alto range. Might this hurt my voice over time? I shouldn't think so. Um, the the only way I think it would hurt you is if you're feeling any kind of physical pain. I would expect there to be perhaps a small amount of transition between the two. Like if you've been singing your high soprano Christian pop, your classical pieces in your higher register for some time, if you had to then immediately switch gears into the lower register Christian pop tunes, I would think that would be quite challenging to do. If I've been vocalizing for a long time in my upper register, the narrowness and lightness of the lower range is I have to consciously remind myself of where I'm going vocally in order to be effective down there. But unless you're feeling physical pain or fatigue, I don't think it would hurt you in any way. I can think of some other sort of ancillary things that may come up in terms of phrasing and consonants, stuff like that, but yeah, I don't think it would be a big deal. I am a bit curious though why you would choose to be in an alto range in the Christian pop tunes, or it's a musical group, so perhaps you got assigned to the alto range. Yeah, but forcing it, like if you're forcing your voice to be low and it's hurting you, then I would definitely advise you to stop and reevaluate how you're producing those pitches. Pushing down is just as hard on our voices as squeezing to hit the high notes. We don't want to push to sing low notes. We don't want to push to sing high notes. We want to take advantage of the natural resonance of our voices, maintain good airflow, and have a balanced vocal approach, at least to start. And then you can decide where you're going to go from there. We're almost done. We've got 2 minutes. If there's any last little minute questions, please throw them in. But I am going to bid you a fond farewell this evening. Thank you so much, or day. I'm not sure where you might be. It's evening where we are here in England. And thank you for the questions. Thank you for participating. And as always, I really, really appreciate all the interactions. Do take good care of your voices. Do consider subscribing if you haven't yet. No pain is good. Yes, the switch is problematic. Sometimes I cannot get back down. Absolutely. That would be the main thing. That would be my concern. And you just want to vocalize for 10 minutes or something like that, 5 or 10 minutes before you have to do that switch, so that you are going to be effective down there and comfortable and in a good place to sing the tunes properly. But I am curious, did you get assigned to that? Is that why you're singing that range? Why not sing in the higher range? That I would think that, particularly in pop tunes, that upper register would be quite desirable. So, anyways, thank you all very, very, very much once again. I really, really enjoy the interaction. I enjoy the live event. If you got questions, do send them via Twitter or leave a comment or something. Increasingly, I'm taking questions here, and as you saw, a couple people emailed them to me in advance, and that way I will make sure to get at them immediately. Thank you, Susan. You have a good week as well. I will be signing off. I heard that a couple of my things got cut off prematurely, so I'm going to let it play out. You're very welcome, JC's Radiant Ray. Singing in a growl register damaged my voice. Gosh, depends on... I didn't know there was a growl register. I think of growl as vocal fry that we induce depending on from time to time. It's 2 a.m. Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. Let me think about that, Greg's Life 7. Well, I'll talk about it. I will make a note of it, and I'll talk about it next week. The thing about it is you don't want it to hurt. If it's hurting you, then you've got to stop and evaluate how you're achieving that sound. Thank you all very, very much for watching. Take really good care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week, hopefully. Bye.